Last week, it was announced that previously secret documents of the Bureau of Military History would be released online to the public. But what's the Bureau of Military History and why does it matter to us? Here to explain is Tommy Graham of History Ireland magazine. Tommy.
Good afternoon, Fionn.
I suppose we're, 3.5 years from the most important centenary in recent Irish history?
Yeah, 2016 is looming. We're very fortunate this archive is now available. First of all, that the word secret there was the Irish Times headline, which is a bit hyperbolic. I mean, it wasn't secret in the sense that we all knew this archive existed. It's just that it wasn't accessible. Now, what we're talking about here is the Bureau of Military History, and this was set up in 1947. Quote, to assemble and coordinate material to form the basis for the compilation of the history of the movement for independence from the formation of the Irish Volunteers on the 25th of November 1913 to the 11th of July 1921. In other words, the truce.
Okay.
And you notice there that it cuts it off at the War of Independence, the truce.
Why is that?
Well, because they once you go beyond that, you're into the whole murky business of the Civil War.
I was going to say, yeah.
And that would create difficulties in getting people to actually, put their thoughts on paper. So it was done under the ambit of the Department of Defence. Now, I'm not sure why that was. I can only speculate that maybe after the end of the Second World War, or the emergency as we called it here, there were a lot of kind of middle-ranking officers with time on their hands. But it's lucky for us that they did, because they then worked for the next 10 years, taking witness statements from participants. Now, the way they did this is they used the old kind of IRA command structures. In other words, they'd contact an IRA unit member, he'd contact his members, then the fella up the chain of command, down the chain of command, word of mouth, and so on. So it's very much weighted in favour of members of the Volunteers or the IRA as they later became known. Now, you're talking about a lot of stuff. You're talking about 1,773 statements.
Okay.
Equal to 36,000 pages, photos, audio recordings, and several sort of collections. For example, the Childers collection. So there are separate, collections of papers included in this whole thing. And the whole thing then was packed up in 83 steel boxes and locked away in 1959.
But when you thought that the use of the word secret was a bit hyperbolic, but until now, was it accessible to the public?
Right. Well, the thing was that there was a committee of historians oversaw this and kind of vetted the stuff for credibility and so on at the time. Then it was locked away. Now, the deal was a bit like the sort of 30 years rule or the 50 years rule with state papers. The understanding was that it could not be opened until the last witness had died. Ah, okay. Now, the last witness didn't die until 2003. Right. Right. Now, a lot of historians didn't like that, because people are kind of queuing up, salivating at the mouth to get a look at this archive for years. I mean, the government has been lobbied. But looking back on it, I think it was a rather sensible decision. I mean, you look at Boston College, the whole furore over its Northern Ireland project. The thing where Anthony McIntyre and some other people took oral statements from participants, IRA and Loyalist. But they didn't have the same rule. Their rule was that when the witnesses themselves died, i.e. Brendan Hughes, his stuff could be released.
Oh, so, yeah, okay.
But of course now it's the subject of all sorts of court orders because the PNSI are investigating cold cases. And the thing is, it means then that any other oral project to do with the recent troubles is dead in the water, because the Boston College gave undertakings that this stuff would not be released. But the thing is that the undertaking wasn't worth the paper it was written on, because as soon as the legal writs started arriving, they crumbled like a deck of cards. So really, that has completely queered the pitch with regard to a similar project with regard to the recent conflict.
How good is the material?
Okay, it varies. Now, the first thing to say is they're described as witness statements. Now, they're not eyewitness statements in the strict sense, because they're written 20, even 30 years after the event.
So they're recollections.
So they're recollections, right, by the individuals concerned. But that's as good as you're going to get in many cases.
And is the makeup, is it principal characters, or is it just ordinary Joes and Janes?
It's everybody, from prominent people, right down to the ordinary rank and file. Now, some prominent people didn't give statements, like, for example, De Valera, for whatever reason, didn't give a statement. Richard Mulcahy. Now, Mulcahy, of course, compiled his own archive, which his son, Ristard. Ristard just celebrated his 90th birthday there, by the way, last week. If he's listening, Ristard's done a great job in putting that into shape. So at least we have Mulcahy's papers, memoirs separately. Other people, though, I think the most problematic statements are from the people who were still public figures when they gave their statements, because they are obviously trying to retrospectively justify themselves right to a certain agenda. So W.T. Cosgrave, for example, gives a rather jaundiced view of the Rising, because of course he's writing after the whole turmoil of the Civil War and so on and so forth, that would devalue that one to some extent. But what's really good are the ordinary rank and file statements, because some of them are very short. They would have done their thing in 1916 or 1921 and then disappeared back into the anonymity of ordinary life. So, it was a kind of a memory preserved, an aspic, if you like, So that stuff is very, very valuable. Now, it's obviously very much weighted in favour of IRA activists, volunteers. There are one or two statements from, British military people, very few statements from people from the constitutional nationalist tradition, as you would expect. There's one statement actually from Alfred Cope. He was the former Assistant Undersecretary at Dublin Castle. Now, he refused to participate on the grounds that it is not possible for this history to be truthful. And I quote, he said, "The IRA must be shown as national heroes and the British forces as brutal oppressors. What a travesty it will be and must be. Read by future generations of Irish children, it will simply perpetuate the long-standing hatred of England and continue the miserable work of self-seeking politicians. Ireland has too many histories. She deserves a rest." Yeah. Some people would subscribe to that. Not me, of course, as editor of History Ireland magazine.
No, you're all for more history.
More history, more the better.
Yeah. And, let's go to the Rising for a minute, because it's one of those strange episodes in our history that we all know about. We all mark as a seminal moment in the march towards independence, but yet there's an awful lot of ambivalence about it as well. There is. I mean,
the evidence from the rank and file people is very kind of prosaic, I mean, I just give you one here. This is Patrick Kelly, G Company, 1st Battalion. "I was in bed at 11:15 a.m. when L. McEvitt came into my room and kept pulling my big toe till I woke." You can just imagine this guy in his bed. "I dressed hurriedly while my father and mother got out my rifle and some sandwiches. I will always remember my father as I saw him that morning. He worked the bolt of the rifle, sighted it and fired imaginary shots. As he handed me the rifle, he remarked, 'If I was a few years younger, I would go with you.' Mother and father wished God's blessing on me as I hurried away." I mean, that's like somebody going to school.
Yeah.
I mean, the innocence of it is particularly striking.
There's one thing that just jumped out. I saw the word opium.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously some of the statements are bonkers. That's all you can say about them. This was a fellow who said that Pierce and all the lads were all on opium the first night in the GPO. You can just imagine the scene, I'm going
to throw it out there.
There's no other evidence for that. If any listener out there has any other evidence, I'd certainly welcome it.
So there isn't a historian that would lend credence to that.
No, there isn't. So again, I have no idea what was in this guy's head.
A joint, maybe.
He was on opium himself.
But I'm just saying, it's just a joint to kind of steal, calm the nerves, something to kind of.
Well, it brings to mind Roddy Doyle's. Roddy Doyle's fictional account called The Star Called Henry. Yes. He has his hero Henry, kind of going out hammer and tongs in the basement with some female member of Common a Man, So little did he realise that they were actually smoking opium as well,
So there's it's a funny thing to say, though, isn't it?
It is a very strange thing to say. I mean, the point is you can't take. You have to assess everything that's said here at face value. The thing is, the compilers of this, to be fair to them, right? They took down the thing warts and all. I mean, they were given instructions not to. Obviously, they tried to clean up the language and so on. They had to straighten it out a bit, but they were very keen to get down on paper, warts and all, what these people said, not what they wanted them to say.
Was there... Yeah, okay, that's what I was going to ask you. So the Bureau of Military History, its purview was to document to the best of its ability the events of whatever it was, 1913 to 1921, rather than, the way history is often written in the present, so with present considerations in mind. So they were to the best of their ability looking to avoid kind of current day pressures.
They were, and I mean, I haven't read the whole collection. Obviously, I mean, it'll be up to historians to judge how well they have. I can just see one slight problem though, is this stuff was under lock and key for so long and there was such an anticipation on its release that sometimes when people quote stuff from the Bureau of Military History, it's almost like this is the Bible, and it isn't. It's as problematic as any other source, and it has to be compared one against the other. I mean, it's the little detail you get, like the Rising mightn't have endured for as long as it did without the Oxo Cube.
Okay, explain.
No, the fella he gets the Oxo Cube, boils it in his billy can, boils the water, and has a something to, a fortifying drink. Maybe they can make an ad out of that. The fellas in the Jeep drinking Oxo, but little details like that. Now women are underrepresented. I think they comprise less than 10% of the statements, and again that reflects the prejudices both of 1916-17 and the prejudices indeed of the 1950s. But there's one lovely little snippet here from Louise Gavin Duffy of Cumann na Man, who's in the GPO. And I quote, she says, "I was brought into the post office and I saw Mr. Pearce. He was as calm and courteous as ever. I now think I was very insolent. It was very insolent of me because I said to him I wanted to be in the field, but that I felt the rebellion was a frightful mistake and that it could not succeed. And it was therefore wrong. I suppose what I meant was that I would not like to be sent with dispatches or anything like that because I felt..." Basically she wanted to be in the field. Now, Pearce then responds, he says, he then asked me, would I like to go to the kitchen? Rather sensitively. But I think that sums up the sort of position of women, particularly Cumann na Man. They tend to be kind of in the kitchen making the sambos.
Okay, listen, Tommy, we're going to take a quick break, but right afterwards we're going to find out if these papers throw up any smoking guns. Tommy Graham of History Ireland still here. We're talking about the documents released by the Bureau of Military History. Tommy, interesting things. You mentioned that the documents or the testimony stops at the end of the War of Independence.
Yes.
So it deliberately avoids the Civil War era.
Yeah.
But yet, the recollections, when they're taken, surely because they were taken 20, 30 years later, they have to be coloured by those same people's experiences of the Civil War.
It is, of course, and of course some people didn't give evidence because they were on the anti-treaty side. I mean, Elizabeth Farrell, now she was the nurse famously photographed, the famous photograph of Pearce as he's about to surrender to General Lowe. She just said all governments since 1921 had betrayed the Republic, so she was having no hand, act or part to do it. One guy, anti-treaty guy, very sarcastically, when he was pressed on some detail, said, well, you could have asked so-and-so, my comrade, but you went and shot him. He'd been executed, Now, Ernie O'Malley tried to redress the balance in County Kerry by taking evidence from the anti-treaty side. Now, O'Malley was a medical student. He never qualified, but he maintained the appalling handwriting of a medical doctor. So one of the problems was it was difficult to transcribe the stuff, but his son Cormac O'Malley and Tim Horgan down in Kerry, they managed to get through the stuff, and it's just been published by Mercier Press. So that's like a little mini Bureau of Military History, Yeah, this would have been this. So there was a reference on some of the anti-treaty people to give the evidence, and as I said in relation to W.T. Cosgrave, he gave this rather jaundiced account because he was very
he's protecting his
well, he was also
reputation.
aware of the sort of, what he would see as lawlessness and so on of the Civil War period. Now, some things did,
smoking guns. Any big revelations?
Well, maybe. This was sent to me by John Borgonovo down UCC and also by Barry Keane. Now, this is one that slipped through the chronological net. It's related to something that happened after the truce, and this is the famous or infamous Bandon Valley killings of April 1922. Now, this is several months after the truce. Now, this is where 13 West Cork Protestants were killed. Now, on the face of it, this has been seen as an example of sectarianism, of ethnic cleansing and so on. In particular, it appeared in the work of Peter Hart, and that was taken up by journalists, and it snowballed from there. Now, there's no doubt that these, the killing of these people was wrong in the sense that this was after the war.
Due process wasn't.
The issue at stake here is what was the motive. See, the problem is that it's very difficult to assign motive to people on the basis of speculation, especially when you don't know who they are. And and the thing is that some people have said that the motive, these people weren't killed because they were Protestant, but they were killed because they were informers. Now, again, just because we're informers doesn't mean it was just about them being killed, seen as the the war was over. But the context of this was the local IRA leaders were up in Dublin at an IRA convention. So what you had were lower ranking people. You had an IRA commander called O'Neill, Michael O'Neill. Now he was unarmed. He called at the house of a Protestant to requisition his car. That's a fancy word for stealing. But this happened a lot, right? Now he was unarmed.
I'm going to requisition your car.
Well, I mean, this was common practice at the time, right? Now the thing is, he was challenged by the Protestant resident, and who shot him, right?
Right.
But the thing is, the particular family were on an IRA blacklist of informers, and this was a list that had been found in a barracks which had been vacated by the Black and Tans, the British, as they withdrew. So the point is, law and order is kind of breaking down because you're in that fuzzy period. The British are pulling out. Civil war is looming. The new state has not yet been established. The head IRA guys are up at Dublin at an army convention trying to stop the civil war, incidentally. So people like Tom Barry, Sean Hales are out of town. And then some of these local, more junior guys take it upon themselves to wreak revenge on this blacklist. So these people are killed. Now, there's a fellow called Martin O'Donoghue has a very matter-of-fact account of this. And this was somebody that, if it wasn't for the fact that the collection was digitised, he wouldn't have found this because he was from somewhere else, right? Now, this guy later went on to become president of the GAA. Now, O'Donoghue states, quote, several prominent loyalists, all active members of the anti-Sinn Féin Society, this was this pro-British intelligence gathering operation, and blacklisted as such by IRA intelligence records in Bandon, Clonakilty, Ballineen, Dunmanway, were seized at night by armed men, taken out and killed. Some were hung, most were shot, all were Protestants. This gave the slaughter a sectarian appearance. Religious animosity had nothing whatever to do with it. These people were done to death as a savage, whole-scale, murderous reprisal for the murder of Mick O'Neill.
Okay.
Now, that's from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Now, I'll leave it up to historians to
and just
judge.
finally, in the run-up to 2016, what do we, how significant is all of this revelation?
I think it'll be very good for the texture, the background, right? I mean, we'll get more rounded pictures of the rebels. I mean, we they're not plaster saints. The problem with plaster saints is, as soon as the plaster saints are created, somebody comes along and smashes them up, Sure. So we won't have that. It'll also be good for the mentalities of people, and listeners can access this stuff themselves. Militaryarchives.ie. There's a couple of articles then in History Ireland on our searchable back catalogue. Just pop in Bureau of Military.
But yet hindsight can often be polarising. So it's almost as though is that built into the tearing away of the plaster around these plaster saints. Then almost there's a kind of a disappointment that then leads to vilify them as being, so they're not saints, they're saints or they're terrible, terrible people, when oftentimes the truth is really they're kind of somewhere.
Well, I think that this will maybe it'll bring out the prosaic, the everyday, and it'll maybe make the more human.
Okay, fair enough. Tommy Graham of History Ireland.
Thanks, John.
Before you do, let us know, if people were interested in having a look at these online, what's the website?
It's militaryarchives.ie. And there's a couple of articles in History Ireland as well. You get them on our searchable website, historyireland.com. Just pop in, Bureau of Military History.
And of course, Tommy is the editor of History Ireland. So thanks very much, Tommy, for that.